Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Brovender, and we're going to learn together the Haggadah, that we all say on the night of Pesach. You know that there's a special mitzvah on the night of Pesach to tell the story of, I guess we could say, to tell the story of Pesach. Why is Pesach so special, and why do we do what we do, and why do we act? Well, it becomes a story that we are obliged to tell. And we're going to tell that story again before Pesach so that everybody could have an opportunity to think about these things and maybe then tell the story in their own way. So you know that there is even I don't see it here in this particular edition, artistically presented by Chabad for our purposes. We start off the evening by saying Kiddush. Now, Kiddush is not a mitzvah that is uniquely part of Pesach. But if you remember, every time there's a Yom Tov, that means on Sukkot and on Shavuot, and of course on Shabbat, we say Kiddush. You know, the word Kiddush is a word that emphasizes the sanctity of it, or the distinction of it. That this day is not like any other day. And what makes it special are the obligations that we receive in our tradition about that day. And that's called Kedushat Hayom, the sanctity of the day. And the day's sanctity is declared in Kiddush. That's what Kiddush is. Kiddush, of course, is a series of words, and we say those words carefully, and we think about them. But the point is that we recognize the fact that this day is different than all other days. Now, there is a difference between the Kiddush that we say on Friday night every Shabbat and the Kiddush that we say on Yom Tov, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. But there are always differences that indicate something special. But we say the Kiddush in recognition of the fact that by joining in to the divine plan for these days, we have produced a situation that is unique, special, and we recognize it. And we say, if we look carefully at the Kiddush itself, which starts here on the left side of the, we say, Asher bachar banu mikol am, God has chosen us. Let me just get this. God has chosen us, bachar banu mikol am, v'romemanu mikol lashon, and raised us above every lashon, every language. In other words, with words, we can do things that other people can't do. I don't know if that means that no other people could do it, but we as a community, as a nation, are able to use language in order to produce Kedusha, in order to produce a special kind of reality. Romamtanu mikol hashon, we have the language with which to do that. V'kiddishanu b'mitzvotav. And furthermore, we recognize the fact that God has given us mitzvot, directives that produce a difference between us and those who don't have these mitzvot, and that's called Kiddishanu, sanctified them. It made us, here the English says, made us holy through his mitzvot. Okay. I mean, I don't, Then the Kiddush continues, it says, "Vatitein lanu Hashem l'tili b'yahava," and God gave us with love, moadim. Moadim l'simcha. One of the aspects of moed, of that special time that's designated in the Torah, Pesach, Sukkot, and Sukkot, right? Moadim l'simcha. Those are called moadim, special times, and they are dedicated to simcha. Simcha means it's all the way it should be. You have that feeling that everything is what should be, and that produces in us simcha. Chagim uzmanim l'sason. Sason and simcha are words that sort of like add to each other, support each other, and they produce chagim uzmanim l'simcha or l'sason. Moadim l'simcha, chagim uzmanim l'sason. At Yom Chag HaMatzot, we'll have to get back to that. The holiday that we're talking about is called in Kiddush, is called Chag HaMatzot. Chag HaMatzot because we want to say something positive. The positive aspect of it, the thing that gives us joy, is that we're able to create this special reality through fulfilling the mitzvah of matzah. We eat the matzah, we're happy that we're able to do the mitzvah in the best possible way, right? But Yom Tov and this special time, Mikra Kodesh, Kodesh Hazeh, Mikra Kodesh, right? Mikra, it's called Kodesh because we do the mitzvah, we're aware of what we have to be aware of. Mikra Kodesh Hazeh Zman Cherutenu. Furthermore, Pesach is called Chag HaMatzot and Zman Cherutenu, the time of our freedom. We gained freedom at that time, so we have an inkling already of what Pesach is about, and so we have an inkling about what the story of Pesach is going to be. Mikra Kodesh Zecher Yitziat Mitzrayim. Finally, Zecher Yitziat Mitzrayim is the memory of Yitziat Mitzrayim, the memory of Yitziat Mitzrayim. Kivanu B'charta, you chose us. V'otanu Kidashta Mikol Ha'amim, and you sanctified us. How did God sanctify us? By giving us the mitzvot. And we're able to live a different life than the others because we have the mitzvot. They're given to us by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh said, live this way. Mo'adei kadshecha v'simcha v'sason hilchaltanu. Ma'adei, mo'adim, that you sanctified. Simcha, the word simcha again. Sason, again the word sason. In chaltanu, you gave us in chaltanu. We inherited it. You gave it to us as an inheritance, and we finished with the bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem Kaddesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. So this is not the story that we're supposed to tell on the night, but this is something about the day. And it's a day which is distinguished. It's a day of Cherut. We eat matzot, we feel liberated, and we remember Yetziat Mitzrayim, which we do a lot of times, a lot of mitzvot. So I would say that this is not exactly the story that we're supposed to tell. This is not Yetziat Mitzrayim, but this is the introduction to the day. What day is it? It's the day of Cherut, Cherutenu. What day is it? Yetziat Mitzrayim. What day is it? Astanu Kidashta Mikol Ha'amim. Right? Simcha and Sason. It's that day. All of that is the day. the day. So while the Seder goes on at the night and is limited by mitzvot that we do, right? We start off with Kiddush and we uh, end up with Havdalah after the day is over. But we have all these references to the special day that we are talking about. And that's what we get from Kiddush. Now there's an add-on that has to be noted. Every Kiddush is introduced by the bracha Borei Pri Hagafen, and that's because the wine that you drink is, I mean, there are many reasons, but I try to give it a halachic limit. Borei Pri Hagafen means we're about to do something important. Whenever we kind of embark on a very important kind of statement or idea, we tend to include the bracha on wine, Borei Pri Hagafen, because that's the only way that we have to indicate the importance of what we're about to do. So if it's somehow connected to a meal, if it's connected to the simcha and the sason, which is generated in part by the food we eat and the wine we drink, we start the Kiddush on Friday night and on Yom Tov with Borei Pri Hagafen. It's true that on Shabbat it seems like it's in the middle, but it's not really. Right? We introduce Kiddush and then we drink the wine and say the Kiddush, which begins with the bracha of Borei Pri Hagafen, ends with the bracha Kaddesh Shabbat on Shabbat. But on Pesach, there's another aspect to this. The Chachamim decided that during the time of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, during the time that we try to fulfill the obligations that the Torah has placed upon us in the most proper way, we should also, during the course of the evening, drink 4 cups of wine. I mean, 4 we'll see is an important number. 4. 4 is an important number. And the wine that we drink when we make Kiddush is the first of the 4 cups of wine. And because it's the first of the 4 cups of wine, there's a special obligation for each and every person at the Seder that you are attending to drink a full cup of wine at that time, at the time of Kiddush. So whereas on Friday night, when you make Kiddush, when somebody makes Kiddush on Friday night, it's possible to kind of join together to drink the amount of wine that's necessary to go along with the Kiddush on Friday night. So the custom is that we kind of give out a little bit of wine to everybody, and then the entire goblet of wine that was used for Kiddush is consumed. But on Pesach, we can't do that. On Pesach, the first cup of wine after we make Kiddush, the first cup of wine is the first of the 4 cups, and the 4 cups of wine are midrabanan, a rabbinic obligation that each and every one of us has as part of the fact that it is Pesach, and that we have an obligation to tell the story. And somehow the 4 cups of wine, I mean, there are rationales, we'll see that, but the 4 cups of wine indicate the four different words that are used to express redemption, geula, geula. So everybody at the table has to drink his cup of wine. His cup of wine. I mean, so there's a difference between the Kiddush that we say on the night of Pesach and the Kiddush that we say on Friday night, on the regular Friday nights, and that is that on a regular Friday night, everybody can drink from the same cup of wine. And that way they achieve a proper amount of wine being consumed after the Kiddush. On Pesach, everybody has to drink his own cup of wine, because the cup of wine has sort of 2 functions. It's the cup of wine of Kiddush, but it's also the cup of wine of the 4 cups of wine that you have to drink on the night of the Seder. And those 4 cups of wine, those 4 cups have to be drunk behaseba. Haseba means leaning. Like the Chachamim told us that, people who feel the freedom of Yetziat Mitzrayim, people who are really like that, like rich people who only eat leaning or lying on a couch. So you have to do it in that way, right? The way that you do it, is you lean, well, however, on a pillow. Or the point is that you do it in a way that indicates that you're thinking about chayut, about freedom, that you want to act out. And that's the beginning of the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. So the beginning of the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim is in the Kiddush. And in the Kiddush, we drink 1 cup of the 4 cups of wine. And we do it while we are leaning. And all of that is done because we want to feel the chayut. Because if we feel the freedom of the day, we'll be able to talk about it and to explain it, and explain it especially to the children who have little experience with this kind of model, and that experience is what they need. But they need to understand what is going on. Here you see the comment here. It says, lean to the left and drink your first of 4 cups of wine. So I think I tried to explain that both leaning and the 4 cups of wine are part of the Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. They're part of the story that you're telling. Because apparently, as we shall see, the tradition wants me to feel it. It doesn't want me to tell a story that they were freed. The people who were slaves in Egypt were freed. But freedom is something that applies to everybody wherever they happen to be. We all yearn for freedom, but we don't often think about what it might mean. So here we have an attempt to give me, well, not an attempt, but I have a reason to think that this is helpful. This is going to help me. The 4 cups of wine, they lean to the left. Well, if you read it in English, sounds silly, but leaning, whether it's to the left or the right, is a different question. But leaning itself is something that the Chachamim, the people who put together the Haggadah, thought that this was something that reflects the rich. Rich people lean when they eat. Rich people sit in very comfortable kinds of chairs. even when they eat. Poor people don't have that opportunity. But it says clearly that if you do that, you're telling the story. You're telling the story of Cherut, of Simcha and Sasson. You're telling that story already, even in the Kiddush, even though the Kiddush is something, the obligation to say the Kiddush is about the fact that it's a special day and not necessarily part of the Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, but we see that right away, immediately it turns into the Sipur of Yetziat Mitzrayim. How do I do this? Okay. Ezra, are you still there? How do I roll it?
Okay, so flip this page where it says 26, hit the arrow to the next page to 27.
Where does it say 26?
Oh,
I see. I guess. Sorry, I didn't. Okay, that's Kaddesh. Now we're up to like something strange. We're now going to go wash, but we're not really going to eat the meal. It's not strange to wash that. We do that whenever we eat. But it is strange to wash. And as the comment here is, I mean, we wash our hands and then we eat something. Karpas. We call it karpas.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
do we have to drink the whole cup or just most of it?
If you can drink the whole cup, that's the best. But if you can't, then most of it is acceptable.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. This is like all kind of strange. I mean, we're washing our hands because we're going to eat something that was dipped in water. Usually we don't, this is really a halacha, but we don't usually do that. I mean, we sort of gone out of use. The question is, of course, what does this have to do with what we're doing with the Seder? Usually Friday night after you make Kiddush, you eat. And today it's Pesach, so we made Kiddush, we thought about it, we drank the wine, we leaned on the table on the place that we were leaning, and now we have to, we start with urchatz, we wash and eat karpas, which is usually a piece of potato, or a small amount. We eat a small amount, so we shouldn't have to. I mean, I don't know what we shouldn't. We don't make a bracha on the washing. I mean, I guess that this is part of the story. Part of the story is that it's got to be inclusive. It's got to be something that everybody can participate in. I mean, if there are children at the table, or maybe the children are old enough to know that something is going on that's very strange, that's what we are trying to achieve. We're trying to be inclusive to the people who have never been at a Seder or to the people who are too young to have been at a Seder. We want to make sure they understand that this is not regular. This is not what we usually do. Not what we usually do. We eat the carapace, like the potatoes, for example, a small piece. And as the commentary here says, you need to say a blessing over it, like anything you eat, right? Any other piece of food that you might eat. So what is it that you're doing? I mean, you're just doing something odd. Doing something odd. Yachatz, all of a sudden we turn our attention to the matzot, which we have already arranged on the table, just like Friday night. We arranged chalot before we make kiddush. Here we arrange the matzah before you make kiddush. Okay, so the matzah itself is a little difficult. I'd like to, with your permission, skip 1 second. Wow, this looks pretty good. Okay, they call it reducing matzah. There's this Aramaic poem. It's not really a poem because that's 3 parts to it. The 3 parts have nothing to do with each other. Maybe that's what a poem is sometimes. But it's an Aramaic, which means it's later. It's the earlier material that we have about Pesach is in the Mishnah and in the Mechilta, where the language of learning was Hebrew. In Bavel, after the exile, the Babylonian exile in 586 BCE, so the Jews became speakers of Aramaic. I mean, it could be also in Eretz Yisrael. They also spoke Aramaic. Aramaic became the dominant language in that part of the Middle East. So suddenly we have a message that precedes the actual telling of the story. I mean, remember in the Kiddush, we had hints that explained things to us about the story. But now we have an introduction which belies our belief, actually. It's such a curious introduction, which the first line is, Hey lach ma'anya, diachalu abatana ba'ara de Mitzrayim. We point to, and we say, this is the bread of the impoverished, the poor people's bread, the matzah. The matzah, halach ma'anya, I mean, of course, it doesn't represent the amount that today you have to pay to buy, like matzot yad for Pesach, but it's called nonetheless lachma anya. It's the preferred kind of bread that the poor people used. The achalu avatana that our forefathers ate, be'ara de Mitzrayim. That's what it is. That's why they ate it. They ate it because they always ate it. That's what That was the less expensive kind of bread. The Ara de Mitzrayim, that's what they... And then the second line is, Kol dichbin yetei b'yechol. Anybody who is unfortunate, needy, impoverished, should come and eat with us. We kind of invite everybody to come to the Seder and eat with us. Kol ditzrich, whoever has needs, whoever is needy, yetei b'yivsach. Come and have Pesach with us. Have Pesach with us. Hashata hacha. This year, we are here. L'shana haba ba'ara de Yisrael. This year we are here in the land of Israel. Hashata abdin l'shana haba b'nei chorim. So finally, we get to mention of matzah and the story. And the story that's told is not the story we wanted to tell. It's a different story. Not reasonable. Look carefully. Here's lechem oni. Here it is, right here on the table. This is the story of the beginning of the story. It's the show and tell of the story. V'ara de Mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt, this is what they ate. And because of that, I remember Kol dichvin yetei b'yechol. All those who are needy, who are hungry, should come and eat, the people in my community. Kol ditzrich yetei b'yivsach. Everybody who needs Pesach should come to me. So who are we talking to? Who are we talking about? We're talking about people in the community that I live in. In other words, my introduction to the story of Pesach, my introduction to the story of Pesach is there are a lot of people who are not B'nai Chorin. There are a lot of people in my community who are not entirely free. There are a lot of people in my community who are hungry. There are a lot of people in my community who don't have a place to be on Pesach. So the first thing I have to do is to invite them. To invite them. It was freedom. Doesn't exist unless you allow it to be contagious. Freedom, the story of freedom for Bnei Yisrael, for the Jewish people, is not the story of a moment in history, but it's the story of a reinterpretation of reality. We are free if every one of us is free. We are free if every one of us can support themselves and live a reasonable life. Then we are free. So we want everybody to have food to eat, and we want everybody, obviously this is not something that we can do on one night of the year. But it's on this one night of the year that we recognize the fact that if there is no opportunity, a lot of people don't have the opportunity to eat, to drink, to have a Seder of Pesach. So that implies something about us, about each one of us. And then finally we end up by saying, Hashata hacha l'shana haba ba'aradi. So I'm going to tell the story. I'm going to tell the story of Yitziat Mitzrayim, of Moshe Rabbeinu leading us in the direction of Eretz Canaan, of coming to Eretz Canaan. But we're not there now. After the Babylonian exile, most of the people stayed away from Eretz Yisrael. After the Roman exile, which goes on to this day, much of Am Yisrael is not in Eretz Yisrael. So I add on this plea. I introduce the fact that Yetziat Mitzrayim is an ongoing event. There's always the drive to bring the Jews back to Eretz Yisrael, Ba'ara de Yisrael. And you remember that in the Kiddush, we already mentioned the fact Zman Cherutenu. Zman Cherutenu, it's the time of our freedom, but is it? If we don't have what to eat and what to drink, and we can't have a Seder. So we say, Ashata Avdin Lishana Ba'abnei Chorin. Ashata Avdin. Now we may be free. We may be slaves. Ashata Avdin. But next year, we will surely be free. So that the notion of freedom as part of Yetziat Mitzrayim, slavery to freedom, is something that is ongoing. It's an ongoing idea that Am Yisrael maintain. So that even though these psukim, or these stitches of the kind of a poem, might be understood as being words of distress and depression. So it said Yetziat Mitzrayim, it didn't work. No, but there's Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim. There's the ongoing involvement with Yetziat Mitzrayim, which we're going to tell about. We're going to tell that story. What it is that we are involved with. What is that we think that we are doing. So we've seen that the Seder begins with Kiddush and then with Holach Ma'anya. And both of these sources deal in a way with the story. It doesn't detail the story, but it indicates that there is a story. And the Holach Ma'anya teaches me that the story of Pesach goes on and on. It's appropriate in every generation. It's not something that happened once many years ago and then we've moved on to other things. No, it's not any of that. What it is the ongoing desire for cherutenu, for our freedom, in which case we have to define what that freedom is. We know that it includes a meal, and it includes the basic needs that people have. But it also includes the notion that Hashata Abdin, there may be some today who are slaves, and slavery could be defined in a variety of ways, as we shall see. L'shana haba'ah b'nei chorim, but we're confident that l'shana haba'ah, that on the next year we will be free. That we will be free. Okay. I think that is enough for today. We'll continue on Tuesday night, I think. Tuesday night. All the best. Be well.
So much,
Thank you for
Brovender. Thank you.